sponsors. So this would obviously not help, we wouldn't be able to do this if we didn't have our sponsors. So I'd like to thank our College Central network, along with Mountain Sac and Live and Jackie Kennedy Harris and 06 Media. Thank you for, helping in this event. And some of these sponsors that we've had have obviously done it over a period of time and many years. So we appreciate your partnership.
I have the pleasure of introducing our next presenters, Mike Marinoff and Erick Briggs, presenting on Skill Marketing, a job seeker's first approach to placement. So one of the rubs when you're introducing somebody is, do we talk about that personal aspect? Do we talk about the first time I saw Mike present? And I think it was at one of our Southern regional workshops, and he was so impressive talking about data and placement. And then the second time, and so we invited him to present at one of the conferences. And so the second time I saw him present, he did this networking presentation talking about kids and boogers, which was awesome. And Erick, I think I saw you present at the California Community College League in Riverside. I don't know if you remember me, but I was the one giving you the hard time about how your product might displace some of our career service professionals. I was wearing my union hat at that time. But I believe the bios are going to be sent out to everybody. And I don't want to take too much time away from your presentation, but just want to let you all know you're in for a great experience. And I'll hand it over to Erick and Mike. Thank you both for presenting for us today.
Thank you, Rosa. I appreciate that. I'm going to get started with intros in a second here, but I do want to say this is really exciting for me. What Rosa was just talking about, I was actually going to open with. I got introduced to this industry like 10 years ago, and Mike would bring me to a lot of your meetings. That was how I got introduced to a lot of this, started really understanding what I was getting into. And no, it's exciting to be here and present to you all. So I'm going to get up our presentation in a minute. Let me get that started, and then I'll quickly introduce Mike and myself, and I will get started. So the first thing I definitely wanted to do, just take a quick second, introduce myself and Mike. We are representing Network Connection. Network Connection is a workforce intermediary that operates mainly in the state of California, and we are in business to contract with mostly community colleges up and down the state. And our main role is to connect students to work experience. And so that's probably why Rosa at first was like, wait a minute, that's what we're doing. And so our job is to supplement that. We work hand in hand with a lot of the folks that are on this call. Rosalinda is one of the people we are currently working with. We work with a lot of job development professionals, and we're on the ground floor, really speaking to employers and connecting them with students. So really quick to introduce yourself. We're both co-founders of the company. I operate in the CEO role right now, manage most of our projects up and down Southern California, a little bit in the Bay Area. And then Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I've got spotty connection, so I just want to make sure that I don't cut out. And if I do, that's where I'll just pass it over to Erick.
Your voice is fine. So you're good.
Okay. Thank you. Wanted to just say thank you to everybody for having us here today and giving us this time. It has been a journey. It's been over 12 years, at least, for me to participate with the group. And you think about that time, we haven't aged at all. And to see the next generation, right, of those coming through. So having spent a decade working in placement, you start to really understand some of the basics. And I think that with our current process that Erick's going to go through, it really starts to lend an understanding of how we go about doing our day-to-day job of getting these students connected to employers. Just to share on a brief note, and I'd like to also interject that I spend most of my day on the employer side. So as Erick mentioned, he runs Network Connection and the phenomenal team that do the daily work, but I also do corporate recruiting. So I am a hiring recruiter, spending my days working with candidates and new grads and going through the process of trying to promote both sides. And I think that this takes that approach. You take the idea of what you just had in the employer panels, and knowing what we look for as we're going through the recruitment process, and you apply it to the job seeker side of the equation. And that's kind of where Eric brought it all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So I'm going to be the main one talking today. Things have changed. You saw us years ago. Mike was always talking and I was making comments. So I'm going to go through the presentation. Mike will make his comments here and there. So let's get started. Skills marketing, a job seeker's first approach to placement. So a couple things before I jump into the slides here. This is a presentation that you could say is geared towards colleges because that's the nature of our work. It's who we mainly work with. We do contract from time to time with AJCCs and other agencies, but we do mainly work with community colleges. However, we feel regardless of your role in placement, you can definitely take some little nuggets out of this and learn or take some best practices that you may be able to use. This presentation is all about service delivery. That's something Mike and I talk about all the time, which is if we have employers that want to work with our students, we got to make sure that we are taking care of them and we are handling their needs, right? First, because things tend to snowball in a very positive way after we do that. And so you're going to hear us talk a lot about that. This is a really proactive approach to getting students connected to work. And we're going to literally go through the steps that our team takes, basically the first half of that. So let's jump into this because as always with any presentation I do, I like to talk about why. Why would we even discuss trying to kind of flip job development to where we're really trying to work with students first and then worry about the employers later. So let's talk about why real quick. Why is this important? So quite a few different reasons, but I listed many that I think are important, especially to the colleges. I think everybody's heard of strong workforce, and if you haven't, this is an initiative from the chancellor's office in the state where, you know, without going into all the details that you've probably all studied, you know, we are being held to placement now, right? We got to get students jobs, and if we don't, funding is on the line, right? We are losing funding for our schools, and so we need to find ways to find out who needs work and how can we get them there. I put COVID-19 and I've had that on for the last couple of years because it has changed the way everyone is looking for work, and students are of course impacted by that. So we have to be more vigilant than ever in how we can help them, especially when 70–80% of classes are online and it's really difficult to engage them, right? We have to think of different ways to get in front of them. We need to understand our student population better. We're going to talk about that a lot. And by understanding our student population better, we can identify gaps in our service delivery. Where are we not hitting the mark? Where can we better serve employers and better help our students? And my favorite, and what our aim is with every school that we work with, is creation of a real job placement culture on campus. Student walks on campus and says, I know that this school is going to help me connect to the career that I really want to be in, which is important to us. And one last why. And actually this slide we've used this for a long time. This example, as you see some of the cities on here, is a little bit zoned in on the Central Coast, moving into the Bay Area, specifically Santa Cruz area. So pay no attention to that. The example's the same. The other reason why I feel this is so important to talk about, because every time we get a job opening, it would be wonderful if we were the only people that took care of that job opening, right? Only us. It's just our job. We get our students. Reality is that's not usually how it works. My upper right-hand corner here, companies have internal recruiters. They're trying to get the placement. Our friends at the AJCCs, although partners to us, they're also working on this. There's a hiring manager. There are friends at staffing agencies that are trying to fill these positions. And then there's us, right? Colleges, or you can be any one of these. If you work at an AJCC, the rest of these folks are all trying to place people into that same role. So if we're not looking at this differently as to how we can more effectively and efficiently connect our students or our clients to work, people will eat our lunch. So we are constantly looking at that. So what I'm going to get into right now is really our process. And you see 7 steps here. I'll run through them really quickly right now because it's not the main focus, but I'm really going to zone in on these 2. That's what we're talking about today, is these first 2 steps. But really what it is here is, I'll start with step 1, documenting student interest and information, right? We are meeting students. We are meeting them and we are finding out who is interested in working with us. Step 2, we are then speaking with those students, getting to know them better and better understand what are their goals, where do they want to go, which leads us to actually starting our conversations with employers, right? Now that I know what this student is looking for, which employers fit what that student needs help with. And then as we speak to employers, Step 4, we receive interest. We market those roles to the students interested, help them apply, and we follow up to understand what happened, right? Did they get the job? Did they not? Did that work-based learning opportunity work out? All that fun, all the fun pieces to this. So again, that's very, very quick snapshot. I'll spend 20 minutes on this during a normal presentation, but just to give you the gist. And we're going to zone in again. Hopefully you can see my cursor here. These first 2 steps, that's what we're going to really zone in on today, which is how do we get to those students and understand what they want? And then how do we get to know them a little better so that we can now, using our word of the day here, so that we can skills market them to employers, right? We are taking their skills because we now understand them, and we are going to the employers and saying, hey, this is a great fit for your company. Okay, that's really what this whole presentation is about. So step 1, gathering and documenting student interest and information. So finding out a little bit more about our students by meeting them. Before we jump into how we do this, I usually talk about how this tends to be done on a college campus. And before I get into that, the reason we do career services a certain way on a college campus is because simply we don't have enough time, right? I'm talking to all of us that are here that do work on college campuses. It is a large task to be helping and trying to help thousands of students every year, right? So typically what we do is, there's a couple of common trends. We utilize what we call passive recruitment, which is generally that we are recruiting for job openings that we've received through an online system, or we are hoping that students walk into our office or to our center to fill jobs, okay? That part has become extremely difficult with COVID, right? Because nobody was walking into our centers. We were off campus for a long time. So that's typically something that is utilized. And additionally, number 2 is staff-based employer engagement. So what I mean by that is that we call up an employer and say, hey, I think you're a fit for our campus. I'd like to bring you down and meet some students, right? Or I'd like to see if you have openings, which is not a bad thing, but we tend to rely on it, right? So what we're going to talk a little bit more about today is how we can learn from students where our employer engagement should go, right? So maybe it's not that we're just thinking of a place and saying, let's call them because cool employer. We're actually asking students where they want to go, and then that's going to turn into the employers that we want to talk to. Okay, so these are a couple trends. So now that and I'll step back real quick, we're going to talk about how we're meeting these students. So if we're talking about passive recruitment, I'm going to kind of define that, all right? What does that mean? What is passive recruitment? And then we're going to jump into a thing called active recruitment, which we kind of see as the opposite of that, which is what we utilize. Passive recruitment. So I just talked about this. This is recruiting for jobs passively, right? This is sending out emails. This is waiting for students to come to us, not taking the students to the employer. Okay. So let me give you all an example here because these numbers need to mean something. So let's say we have 1,000 students that we would like to market a position to. Okay. Passively, the way to try to recruit students for that would be send an email blast, okay, to students. We have an opening, right? There's an employer, a local employer that we'd like to fill a job for. So if I have 1,000 students, the show up rate, and I'll define that, is that 10 to 15% of those students will open that email. So for any of you that have been a part of email marketing, 10 to 15% is actually not a bad number. That's good. But in terms of us trying to get eyeballs on jobs that we have, we've gone from 1,000 people to 100 to 150 that just saw the email. 850 to 900 never even saw it, okay? And these are based off of things we've tried, okay? And from working with a lot of the colleges we worked with. So we're already down to 100, 150. So we look at our completion rate, okay? What's a completion rate? Well, out of those 100 to 150 eyeballs that were looking at my job, 10 to 15% of them complete the actual job application. So out of the 100 to 150, I'm now down to 10 to 15 students ballpark out of the 1,000 that were originally here. And then the follow-up rate, you might have guessed it, is how many of those students applied and actually checked in on that job. So 10 to 15% of those 10 to 15 students that I had left is 1 to 2 students. So out of 1,000 people that I emailed this to, 1 to 2 applied and actually checked in on the job. So this is passive recruitment. This is sending out jobs to students, hoping that it will be something they like, okay? So now to get into the real fun stuff, which is, well, what if we flip that? And we try to engage our students differently than trying to send out those jobs through email or in a different way. So we look at active recruitment. This is what really drives what we do at Network Connection. So let's take those same 1,000 people. Let's say we have 1,000 people, and I can tell you from the numbers that we put together that as we get into a classroom, 80 to 90% of the students in that class will fill out a questionnaire that I give to them, okay? That questionnaire, and I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later, I have a whole slide on it, about what it is very, very pointed on the availability and the skills that the students might have to get into an internship or job. I'm not worried about demographic information, student ID numbers, none of that, just very much zoned in on the job. So I started with my 1,000 and I got 800 to 900 to give me really valuable information on how ready they are for the job market and how interested they might be in gaining work experience. So I'm still at 800 and 900. And then I have 25 to 30%, so it sounds like a low number, 25 to 30% of those 800 or 900 have a conversation with us. They have an initial conversation, 15, 20 minutes, where I get to learn more about that student, find out their goals, types of companies they might be interested in. And now we're there, right? So 25, 30% of 800, 900 people, we're looking at still having, roughly 200 to 250-ish of those students available, okay, maybe plus or minus a little bit more. And then follow-up rate, meaning after I met with those students, I asked them to let me know 5 companies they're interested in and get a resume back from them, because if I'm going to help them, I need a resume, right? And 75 to 80% will be retained from that, right? 20 to 25% will say, it's too much work. I don't really want to do this right now, or timing's not right for me. So bottom line, out of 1,000 people, I still have 150 to 200 job seekers that now are actively working with me, because my offer was I'm going to help connect them to work. So I'll flip back and forth real quick. 1 to 2 students, 150 to 200. 1 to 2, 150 to 200, right? So as we look at this, I'm happy with that. It might seem like, oh, well, 150 out of 1,000 is not that great, Eric. Well, no, it's a great thing, because we've gone through a whole vetting process, and we're going to talk more about that at the end of this. So I now know who really, really wants a job or an internship. So I'm going to say this again a lot too. Now I can tell leadership on campus, no, let me tell you who actually wants a job, right? We don't have to live in a place where we think everybody's looking for one. We know exactly which students are interested in our services, okay? So that's really important for me to kind of point out the difference in how we're doing this. So when we talk about active recruitment, you heard me say we get in the classroom. So each semester, every semester, we get into the classroom and we learn more about students, right? We spend about 10 to 15 minutes in the class, put up a quick presentation, offer our services to the students, and we hand out that questionnaire I talked about. And through that simple questionnaire, I learn a lot of different things. What types of jobs and internships are students interested in? Which employers do they want to go to, right? And if they don't know, I need their help, right? Because it shouldn't just be me looking at employers. This is their job and their future. I want them involved in the process. Are they currently working? It's one of the biggest numbers we get. We find that almost 55, sometimes 60%, depending on the campus, of students, they already have jobs. So when sometimes we're frustrated as to find out where the candidates are on campus that want the work experience, you gotta realize sometimes these students are already working. A lot of their time is spent on the job they currently have. It is spent on their family, going to school, lots of different things that are going on in their life, right? So we can learn that just from asking a simple question. We learn what steps are they taking on their own, right? What are you doing already that I can then supplement and help you out with? And honestly, what types of services do you need me for? Maybe they just want resume edits. Maybe they want to go to some workshops. Maybe they're more interested in work-based learning. Maybe they're interested in apprenticeships, internships, all of that. We'd like to learn more about that. Okay, so in this simple questionnaire, I can ask them all that, and I get that done within 10 to 15 minutes of being in a class. This isn't a presentation on outreach, but one little other tidbit I'll throw in there is we spend 10 to 15 minutes and we never go a second over, right? And that's how we keep our relationships with faculty, right? No, faculty members don't love when you tell them, I have a 10-minute presentation and 45 minutes later, you're walking out of the classroom, right? So we try to keep it zoned in on the exact time that we've told them we're gonna be in there. We get in, we get out, and we have a lot of great information from students. Something else that we definitely have learned though, especially over the last couple of years during the pandemic, is through just these simple class visits and being really proactive in engaging students, we've learned about where their head's at, right? What are they thinking about? Because I'm very biased, right? I think about work experience and how important it is for students. And that's where my head gets stuck. I'm like, how do you not want to do this, right? Or how is this not the thing that you're really interested in right now? And the answer is there's a lot of stuff on students' mind, right? It's not just work experience. That's just our job. There is class time. I'll start at the top kind of center here and work my way around clockwise. Class time. Then I got to go home and do schoolwork. I have my current job. COVID and everything surrounding it is on my mind and how that affects me and my family and my friends. Family and friends on the left-hand side here. And then, of course, we'd be mistaken if we didn't know that students have free time, right? And social media, TV, entertainment, those things are fun to them, right? And I don't think I put a slide, I did not. I generally have an extra slide on this, but I'll just kind of sum it up of there's some common themes of some of these other things that I've listed here besides work experience at the bottom. And those things are that they're mandatory, they're fun, they're relaxing. There's pieces of those things that are in their mind that we got to somehow kind of work experience into, right? We got to make it something that's sort of interesting for them or show them the value of gaining experience while in school or the second that they're done with their certificate or degree. So something I find really fascinating that I'm kind of just building off my last slides for you of is that, when we start engaging students more, yes, at first we're thinking, wow, I don't have enough time to engage hundreds of students, but we're talking about kind of replacing some of the things you do with this. And you start to learn so much about students and where your work starts to fit in with their life and then how you can make it a more meaningful piece of what they're doing. So on top of that, and the reason that, or one of the pieces that helps us gain all this valuable information is the questionnaire that I talked about. This is an example. This is actually one I think from a couple years ago. So it's been updated from here, but I won't go through all of it, but just some of the questions. And you can see they're not invasive questions. How many units are you currently enrolled in? Well, why do I need to know about the student's unit? Well, because the amount of students that are really, really eager that also say they're taking 20 units, that happens, right? And I have to be able to talk to the student and say, hey, how are you going to do this job while you go to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all day, right? How many hours per week can you work, right? Because famously, I'll tell you, especially working in the community colleges a lot, students get eager about wanting work experience. And then they're like, all right, I can work Friday and Saturday nights. I'm like, okay, well, that might not work with the employer. So we have to kind of understand the availability. And I'm giving you some instances of when it doesn't work for a student. Most of the time, students have availability. We can work in with that. And then you see questions like number 6 down here. How many courses have you taken in your field of study, right? Have you progressed further? Or have you just taken your intro classes? So we're just kind of getting these top level items understood so we can see where we can help the student. And then very much, of course, do you want to work with us? Yes or no? Okay. Always yes or no, right? We're not forcing anybody to work with us. This isn't mandatory, at least from the work that we do. So we always want to give students a choice. But this simple questionnaire, and for all of you may be thinking right now, hey, Eric, could this be digital? Of course. We have turned a lot of this into QR codes. Students can scan this with their phones. I will tell you, it's been fascinating, though, to watch that if you give students a QR code, your numbers will go down. And reason being is you're giving them, this might sound wrong, they have a choice, right? To then now do it after class. And once you leave class, you might forget, right? So when we walk in with a questionnaire, a hard copy, even though it's old school, you get more answers. It's a pretty interesting concept, even though you would think QR codes are the thing today, and they are. There's a decision to make there. Okay, so this isn't brand new for people. A lot of career services professionals have brought in intake forms. My main thing here is keeping it very pointed, right? Making it zoned in on work, right? What work experience? A lot of times I've seen really large intake forms, 3-4 pages long, everything about the student, and the college a lot of times already has that information. So it can be just a bit duplicative. So again, let me recap real quick, because I'm going to run right into, or sorry, I'll recap right here. What have we done by doing this? So what have we done by getting into a classroom and really asking focused questions to these students that I can now talk to them about? Well, data and employment information has been unlocked, right? This is something that I think, we've heard from the chancellor quite a few times. We need to know more about the students. And this is actually info that I pulled in, right? I'm not waiting for data that could be a couple years behind. I met this student yesterday and I now know more about them. So I know more about what they're looking to do. A lot of times students will volunteer to us where they're working and what they're currently doing, which is extremely helpful for us. Step number 2, and then I'll even say, not step number 2, the second bullet point here and the 5th bullet point kind of go together. Show students how normal hiring processes work and respect for the employment process. So what I mean by that is, by putting something in front of the student that they need to fill out to start engaging with us, that's kind of how applications work, right? You need to get an application in for a student to start working towards their career. And I can definitely speak for a lot of you that are at the colleges, right? A lot of times we are working with students that have not worked before, or they've had a very entry-level job and this is new to them. They don't understand all this yet. So it's kind of a way of educating them right away. Hey, there are steps to this and we're going to help you through it. Okay, so I think it's very important. Third bullet point here, we find out what the student needs us for. Okay, take network connection, replace that with your college, with your center, however you'd like. I now know this student needs my help for a resume. They want to work towards an internship. They've taken these 6 classes. That tells me they have skills in this area. Oh, by the way, they have 30 hours of availability. That's good, right? I now understand the student before I've ever even spoken to them. And I start to establish a relationship with the student, which I think is very important. You could take relationship, change it out with rapport. I now am starting to understand this person individually, right? Instead of saying, hey, you're in this program and I'm going to understand you as a whole, I'm understanding this individual and what their goals are. Okay, I think it's extremely helpful just from that one document, one QR code, however you'd like to do it. So just to recap, we've just talked about actively engaging students, right? Before we even talked about employers, actively engaging them to better understand them and what they'd like to do, right? So let me go through. You guys all hear me still? Yeah, cool. Okay, I just want to make sure. So second part of this, and this is just one slide here, is that once we've gotten all this information, we got to document it, okay? It's not enough for us to go in, grab a bunch of pieces of paper or get a bunch of QR codes and just be done, right? We need to document this. So whether it's Excel, whether you have a job placement system where you can document case management, and that is a theme. I know all of the AJCC folks that are here know this. Case management is extremely important. If you're gonna be working with students on placing them, we got to be able to document everything that's happening. So we take all this back. For us, we use Excel. We love building out really complicated Excel sheets that document everything we have, but a CRM, some of the employer engagement platforms that you all have also work for this as well. Okay, but very important to keep documentation. It's something I have to do a lot of because, of course, we are reporting back to a lot of you, right? Mike, did you want to mention something, or are you just hanging out?
You're getting close, man. The next bullet, I'm going to chime in. I appreciate that.
Okay. No, I thought you might. So now we're going to move into kind of the second piece here, which is we have met students, right, in a class. We've engaged them. And what I haven't mentioned yet, and I'll talk about this a little bit, is we've kind of made a little promise to them when we were in the classroom. And for us, that is that we're going to be in touch with you within 3 to 4 business days. Okay. That does not mean that everything I'm saying here today, please take that. And if it sounds interesting to you, make it your own, right? It could be a week, it could be 2 days, it could be whatever you'd like to do. But the point is, we're putting our neck on the lines a little bit to say, hey, you've told me you're interested today. I'm going to go make an attempt to be in touch with you very, very shortly. And why? We've all been to conferences. We're on one right now. You get a lot of great information. And I think it's within 2 weeks, if you don't use the information or continue to work on it, you lose it. Okay. So if we walk into a classroom and we meet students and say, hey, I'm Eric, I want to provide these career services to you, and I wait 4 months to get in touch with them, you're not getting a response. And if you do, it's a very, very small level, right? So what we're saying is, hey, I'm going to reach out to you in the next 3 to 4 days, and we're going to talk. Okay, we're going to set up a time for us to speak, similar to how counselors work. We are not counselors, or at least in my instance, we are not. We're more from the career coaching side, but similar to how a counselor would, right? Hey, let me speak to you and let's talk a little bit more about what your goals are. Okay, so let's jump into that. And Mike, just tell me whenever you want to jump in. So this is just an example. And you see Cuesta College on here as a college we worked with up in San Luis Obispo area a while back. This is just an example, and this is an email. I will tell you that our staff uses text message for everything, which I know is a hot button at colleges. It's not that easy to implement. There's a lot of equity sort of issues with that. So I totally understand that. But we use text message a ton. That's how we communicate with students, because they answer. And a lot of times they don't answer emails. But here's an email example for you. We met them in class, and within those 3 to 4 business days, this is an email that went out to them, right? Thank you for listening to us. Just to sum this up, please reply back and let me know your availability, and we'll be in touch with you, right? That's it. And we'll keep following up on this. This is not a one-time email. So my thing at the bottom here for you is, what is your offer? What are you offering to your students, right? And if whatever you've offered, have you asked them if that's what they actually want? That's something that I'm always interested in asking colleges, right? What are you offering students, and have you asked them if that's what they've actually wanted? Okay, so I put that there as just a question for you to sort of think about when I do this presentation in a bigger setting. We do breakouts on this, right? To ask, what is your offer? So I encourage you to do that, right? Sit and think, what am I offering students, and have I surveyed them to find out if this is what they're looking for? How do they want to be communicated with, right? Have we surveyed them about that? It's a good thing to start talking about. So when we set the appointment with students and we speak with them, just a real quick, it can be in person, via phone, via Zoom, however you'd like to do it, 15 to 30 minutes. I would keep it more towards 15 minutes. We review that questionnaire or intake form, whatever you'd like to call it. And then the big deal is we ensure there's a follow-up plan that is discussed, okay? There is more touch points for us to speak with that student, right? This is not a one-time conversation. We want to continue to speak with them. A lot of times our staff is talking once, twice a week to students, just figuring out more about what's going on with them. So very important, get to know your student a little better. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I do want to leave some time at the end of this, but when we're speaking with them, here's just an example of some of those questions, right? And I mentioned this a little bit earlier when we were talking about the questionnaire. Your availability. You're available 25 hours a week. Talk to me about when that availability is, right? I leave some of these questions open so I can better understand when the student can work. Let's say a student says, I've taken Business 101. That's it, right? The first class. And let's talk about what we may be able to do instead of an internship this summer. How can I get you in work-based learning? Because maybe we need to get some more classes under your belt. But these are just examples of why it's so important to meet with the student, because on its surface, they could say they have 25 hours per week and that they've taken a business class. And I could say, great, let's get you placed, right? And then I find out those 25 hours are at night, they're not during business hours, and that they've only taken an intro class, right? It's so important to have these conversations to better understand who the student is. Time check real quick for me. Okay, we got like 25 minutes. Okay. After we speak with the student, kind of my last piece here, a little bit of homework is what I'd say. I don't call it homework because then the student's going to run away from me, but I need to start getting some information back from the student, right? Of course, I need a resume. I need to help them out, right? Is that resume good? Can I work with counseling or somebody else to get it buttoned up? Can this student tell me 5 companies of interest? And if they can't, little secret to this whole thing, if they can't, they probably don't know where they want to work yet or what they want to do, right? So the more time we put into that student without them knowing where they want to go, it's going to be hard to get anywhere. So that's the first question we talk to students about. Hey, go research. Tell me a little bit about some companies that you're actually interested in so I can better understand where you want to go. And then optional, have them set up a LinkedIn. That's up to you all. And by the way, this whole thing is up to you. You could say, I talked to the student and then my little bit of homework for them was I wanted them to start a portfolio, or I wanted them to sign up for one of my workshops. That's it. You can put something at the end there that is your little bit of homework. Mike, something you want to add?
So you're kind of going through this courtship, if you will.
Yep.
I'm going to do that dating analogy and kind of use the continued flow of this, where you see that Erick has this involvement. I wanted to go back a couple slides real quick to a small bullet. And I think to me that this is one of the most, keep going, important. There's the 2-bullet slide that talks about the initial outreach. So when you're going from this piece of the equation to meeting the students in person, this is now working on college campuses, working for the AJCCs up and down the state, dozens of them. This is where the process differentiated between those that we saw tremendous success and those that didn't. When you start the process of proactive outreach to your clients, your job seekers, your students, whomever they might be, it begins the relationship development piece of the equation. And this is something, again, that comes with mixed reviews. We send text messages. We have a system of 3 to 5 proactive outreach processes to these individuals. We'll call them on the phone, we'll send them a text message, we'll email them to let them know that we want to sit down with them and go through this to get them to where they want to go. As opposed to, again, a passive process of sending an e-blast or posting something onto a job board system. This one piece of the puzzle, right? I'm not allowed to use my personal cell phone to text students. I don't have the ability to call them directly because of my system. We get the limitations. But this, again, changes the dynamic radically from I have all this available for you to I'm coming to you with it. Right. And it's about this piece of the puzzle, this courtship, and sitting down with them and expressing interest in them. Case management through the process for those at the AJCCs becomes this relationship piece of the puzzle. The relationship continues, as Erick will show you, through the hiring process and the reporting back of that information. But you really have to think about this as, you know, I'm calling for those dates. I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm texting. I want to help you. I want to help you. How can I help you?
Yep. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you for driving that home. So actually, and I'm gonna pick this back up. We're actually on the last few slides here. I've gone through this really quickly. I'll usually spend more time, but with us having the hour here, I'm gonna kind of wrap this all up now, right? So we have gotten into the classroom. We've actively engaged our students. By the way, I just saw the chat, and Shamara, it's great to see you. It's been so long. I saw the Quest to College was here. That was really cool. We've met students through the class. We've been active with them. We've been engaging. We've then individually met students, or you can do that in a group setting, but we have spent time with students and learned more about them. And so now we're starting to get a really full picture of all these students that we're working with. And so Mike came up with this example years ago that I've continued to use, and I think it's a really good one, which is that we've created a triage process, right? Like many of us, I think most of us, have in some capacity been to an emergency room. And, you know, I was taught by my mom as a kid, right? You better say everything hurts real, real bad, or else it's going to take 8 hours, right? And so in a way, what we've done is we've met the students, we've told them our expectations and what they can expect of us. We've then from there moved forward and started to work with the student. We've learned more about them. And we've given them a little bit of homework that has said, hey, how bad do you want to move on this? I've given you a deadline. How much do you really want to work on this, right? And what you're going to find is some students are going to reply within 30 seconds. They're going to get everything to you. Some it'll take a couple of days and they'll hit that deadline right when you need it. And others will say, I'll do this when I want to, right? And so now you're going to spend your time on the people that are really, really putting effort into this, okay? So our red section here, immediate, are the people that are getting everything back to you right away. Here's my resume. Here's where I want to work. Here's what I'm looking to do, right? And as we get towards the bottom, these are the students that I had to follow up with 5 times. And I finally said, you know what, you contact me, okay? So, and obviously in the middle, there's all varying levels of interest and dialogue that goes on with students. But the point here is we're understanding who's going to work with us right now and who maybe we'll work with down the line, right? We want to provide equal access to everybody, but the students will show us who's the most eager and who really wants a job or an internship or an apprenticeship, anything of that nature right now. And kind of one of my favorite slides, I stole this from a dean, now a VP up in the Sacramento area. And I've always loved this slide, and this is really going to end the presentation today before we have, I think, perfect 10, 15 minutes for some questions. We've done all this work and it's like, hey, Eric, that's a lot. Now I got to get in all these classes. I got to do more case management. There's a lot going on. And like I said earlier, please think about this as examining your process and saying, could I implement some of this stuff for my own? So here's what happens because you've done all this. We found that students typically fall into these 4 categories that are right in front of you. Not always, but pretty good summary. So let me explain them for you. Active skilled, this is our dream. Active skilled students, they got the skills, they're ready to go, and they're engaged, right? They are looking to gain work experience right now, or they want to get connected to a job. We want to get everybody here. Upper right-hand corner, active unskilled. This is your student who just is in their first semester. They just got out of high school. They're starting school, and they're like, Eric, throw me in that internship right now. And I'm like, hold on. All right, let's take a step back. Let's make sure that you take a couple classes and that you can take care of the duties and responsibilities these employers are asking you, right? But in a great position, just maybe a little too early. Bottom left-hand corner, passive and skilled, right? This is the student who's ready to go. They're in their last semester, right? They should really be zoned in on where they want to go to work, but you can't get them to send you a resume if you follow up in, it doesn't matter, email, phone, text, they're not responsive, okay? But they're ready, they should be there. And then the bottom, passive unskilled, right? Which a lot of times we're not going to work with, okay? They're not interested in speaking with you at the moment, and they're not ready yet, okay? So probably not the person you're working with. So let me finalize this. Our goal is to get everybody here, upper left-hand corner. So here we are trying to place these people, jobs, internships, apprenticeships, whatever you're working with them on. These 2 corners, active unskilled and passive skilled, are perfect for all our other employer activities. Work-based learning with tours, internships, job shadowing, you name it, panels, because I got to keep these students engaged while they're not ready yet, right? And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you're waiting for those students to come to you because they're not really interested in speaking to you right now. So by keeping these 2 involved, they turn into active skilled over time. So do you see how my process starts to keep circling? Because I place people and then the other students I'm helping move into the active skilled area. So because I've learned so much about these students and I've given them my time, I know exactly how to help these students, whether it's a job, work-based learning, whatever it might be. And when it comes to a job, I know which employers they want to go. It's not guesswork. There's no more guesswork in this. So I'll end with what this has done, right? It's allowed your job development employer relations staff to creatively address students' needs in a custom manner, right? I don't have to think of every student as, one discipline. I can think of every student individually. Provides you with the flexibility to choose quality over quantity for employers when needed, right? As opposed to, primarily letting the employer know this whole thing is handled online. And my favorite part, you have an answer to the college on placement goals. We don't have to make up numbers, right? Because I have met with these students and I know how many of them are actively engaged and how many of them are not interested in finding a new job right now. So instead of making up numbers for my goals, I know exactly where to go with this, okay? If you can find a path with no obstacles, probably doesn't lead anywhere. I always put this at the end of my presentations because I know what I just presented is a lot of reworking of thinking maybe in the system, but it leads to good things. So I'll open it up for questions right now if anybody has any. I'll throw it out there that, Mike and I, we primarily, like I said, contract with community colleges. If you ever feel your school is interested in learning more about what we do, our contact information is right here. We'd love to talk to you and see if we can help in any way. But most importantly, thank you so much for having us today. It's been really, really cool being in front of you all. So I'll open it up if you all have any questions for us. So thank you. All right, let me move over here. Jennifer, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Eric. I
Hi.
am new in the job developer position here at Cuesta College. It's nice to meet you.
Cool. Yeah.
Really appreciate your presentation.
Sure.
I'm running into a lot of active unskilled. Could you share with me more about the steps or the approaches you would take to those?
Sure. So first thing, and maybe you've already gone this route, but first thing is getting in touch with faculty, right? Because if you are talking to a lot of active unskilled students, right, that means they're eager, but the skills ain't there yet, right? Mostly technically, right? Because they could be awesome with their soft skills. So I would immediately talk to department chairs, faculty, and really zone in on, hey, I need to know the classes where these students are getting closer, right? Because I can keep these other students engaged, right? Those active unskilled students, but they're not ready yet, right? And if I throw them into a position, chances are it might be unsuccessful, or B, and this doesn't happen a lot, I don't want to scare people, but or they leave the school because they're like, oh, I got the job and I didn't really learn much, I might as well head out, right? So you want to be careful with that. So that would be my number one answer. Start talking to faculty. Where are the students that are ready, right? So I can get in front of them. And very important for me to mention, I'm on a constant journey for that, Jennifer. We are always trying to figure this part out because it's oddly, sometimes it's hard for colleges to find out who's completing, who completed, right? And we know that there's a lot of people at the community colleges taking classes, and sometimes not, sometimes just for upskilling, right? So I hope that answers your question. That would be my number one thing, is to talk to faculty, really start figuring out where do I need to go to find the ready people. So
You mentioned job shadowing and tours and that
Sure.
sort of thing. Is it anything else like that you might add to it?
Yeah, well, during the pandemic and even continued now, my goodness, have information sessions virtually been incredible for everyone. Like we've had so many awesome virtual information sessions where we have 30 to 50 students from a college in one discipline sitting there listening to some awesome employers, right? That's been great. Competitions are fun, Jennifer, if you can ever figure them out, but that takes a specific discipline usually, like you have a coding competition or something. That's a great way to get employers involved. I mentioned job shadowing, interview prepping, having employers do workshops for you instead of putting it all on your back. The list goes on. Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Anything else? Denise, go ahead.
Thanks. Well, I'm kind of like Jennifer. I work with a lot. It seems like lately I've been working with a lot of active unskilled, but
Mhm.
so I work with Department of Rehab. So I end up working, if they decide to leave college, I still have them. So,
Yeah.
So I have these people who haven't completed anything, who may have even had experience in the past, but not
Right.
really, and they really need to get a job. And I know the job market is good out there, but it's, they're, even though they're probably down of who an employer would want to hire, and I have a lot of them.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas for that group?
Well, I mean, so some of it's a little bit of tough love, right? Like, I hate to say it, a little bit of it is like being honest with them that, hey, I need you to be super participatory in this process. Otherwise it's going to go nowhere. So Mike and I are very direct. I would let that person know, hey, here's what we're going to start doing. We're going to button up your which I'm sure you've already done this. We're going to button up your resume, get that going. And I'm gonna have you start walking in places because I need to have you engaged. And if you're not fully into this, those conversations aren't going to go well. So instead of me, Denise, putting my neck on the line with you not being interested at the moment or not being as involved, I need you to start getting involved in this, right?
Mhm.
So that would be my number one thing, is having a talk with them, because the other thing is, I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't have an answer for somebody who doesn't want to be involved, right? I mean, that's where it's like, well, then how do I assist, right? What is the old saying, right? I can lead a horse to water, but I can't drink it for them.
Right.
So I hope that helps. I know it's a kind of a brick wall,
It
but
is.
I would start making them really involved and say, look, I'm going to help you at the beginning. You got to take it from here, because I got a lot of people to help. Right.
Right.
So,
Right. Thanks.
yeah, of course. Anybody else? All right. I think Mike was answering some questions too here. Yep. Okay.
Trying to
Cool.
grab that chat.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Going once, going twice. We'll get this off. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate having us. Thank you. And please, contact information, I'll actually throw it in the chat, to feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, CPA would love to thank you, Eric and Mike, for being here today and going over the trends within our career services. I really
Sure.
did like that last one, kind of wrapping it together with the 4 quadrants. That was the first time I actually seen it broken down that way. So I thought it was a really
Yeah.
good way to kind of wrap everything together and seeing which ones we should be focusing on. And like you said, how do we get it to that active skill participant? So we
Sure.
appreciate your time today. You guys did an awesome job. Appreciate it.
Oh,
Thank you. Thanks, you guys.
So next year we will be March 1st through the 3rd, 2023 at the DoubleTree Hilton at the Golf Resort in Palm Springs. We look forward to seeing you there. Think about it, save the date, start mentioning it, and plan it on your fiscal budget for next year so that we can see you live and in person.